few minor administrative details and I'll be right with you. I'd like to take care of these things before I start, but sometimes it's just better to check things afterwards. Of course, the main concern is the video and the sound. I think it's okay. Looks like it anyway. I have turned on the chat for those of you who like to engage in that. Thank you. That's just between myself and someone else. Okay, the chat is on, so you can take part in that if you so like. And it's obvious from the title of this, is the CIA vanquished or reformed? You kind of know why I'm doing this live stream. And this is going to be kind of a complicated one. It's going to weave around a little bit for a lot of reasons. I'm Roy Potter. This is the live stream version of the Potter Expositor. Welcome everyone as you come in. I imagine this chat room is starting to get busy. Yeah, it is. And reporting for Coffee and Morning Briefing. Yeah, and of course I've got my lemon juice and honey here, and it's hot. Ooh, I just finished heating it up, which is one reason why I was just a minute or so late getting on, because I really need that. Well, I'm still working out some things here, and it helps to have that hot lemon juice and honey in there working. So, I'm not even sure where to start here. I've taken some notes down on things that I wanted to discuss. And I guess where I'll start is here. I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter who do long threads in their research, and I really appreciate their research. I don't always agree with them, but again, that's not a reason to call people names or to hate anybody. It's just different viewpoints, and we need that. But I sometimes wonder about the logic that I see. And I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings here, but we're so intent on protecting those that we like in politics that we fail to see the bigger picture, in my opinion. And that's kind of what I'm seeing happen on the Trump side of the Trump train. Now, I'm on the Trump train, so to speak, but you know how I am there. I'm reserved. I got to see it. I'm from Missouri, right? I got to see it to believe it. I want to see the rhetoric manifested on the ground. And for the most part, that's happening, except in some specific areas that concern me. But I digress. Anyway, in these threads, there's been, especially with all of the situations that have happened over the last week or so, there are people there who are saying, again, well, Sessions is doing this stuff behind the scenes that's really magnificent, and he's just being quiet. And he's doing it to not bring attention to what he's doing so that they can spring this on the guilty or whomever, the deep state, etc., because they won't know what he's doing, and then it'll be a surprise. That's kind of the argument, the explanation on Sessions. Think about that for a minute. I've said so many times that nobody's fooling the deep state. Nobody's fooling Hillary Clinton. Nobody's fooling the FBI or the CIA. All right? It just isn't happening. But the illogic in the argument is what really gets me. Because then they'll say, after they say, well, Jeff Sessions is keeping this low profile so that he can spring it on, that it's going to be a surprise, that they don't know what he has, etc., etc. And then they'll come out and they'll say, but the deep state is worried. They're really worried. Well, if they're worried, then they must know. So you see, it's mutually exclusive. It can't be both ways. And I've said that there's no way that the deep state doesn't know every move that Trump makes. The only thing that he has to his advantage is that he has the power behind him in the right side of the DOD, and there's a wrong side. Let's say a white hat side and a black hat side, just like there is in any other three-letter agency. So anyway, I'm just going to say again, I would hope that Sessions is doing exactly what these researchers say, but let's not be so anxious to defend our position and our favorites in the political arena that we don't call them to task and call them for what they are. Now, it can go the other way too. You can make accusations that aren't proper as well, but I would rather fall on the side of caution and say I don't trust a politician than to throw myself totally at them. Now, I have been very supportive of Donald Trump very often, but I've also been very critical. One or two times I got so mad at him and I just wanted to throw his butt out. Of course, that wouldn't have been a good idea because he really is the last chance we have, I think, besides God, besides the awakening in the people themselves, which is really what put him there in the first place. And that's why I get so concerned when there's any apparent backtrack. I really love the people that are standing up and pushing that there has to be a full investigation and prosecution into the pedophile networks that, of course, are worldwide in major government, ecclesiastical, and corporate institutions, educational institutions, etc. I'm all for that. And it can't happen fast enough because those people are, those women and children, both child trafficked children and women, some men, but mostly children and women, are suffering every day. And sometimes they will even get to the point where they suffer from Stockholm syndrome, or they don't even realize the danger they're in, or how they're being abused. So I'm all for that, and I appreciate Craig Sawyer. I appreciate the inroads that President Trump has been making so far. We're still not seeing the upper level people yet. We're going to talk about that for a little bit this morning. And of course, the other law enforcement people, the good ones that are really making inroads. But don't kid yourself, there are a lot of people in law enforcement in positions of power that are blocking this as best they can, and including the courts. So I appreciate all that. And Liz Crokin, I'm bringing her up here, has done an outstanding job in making sure in her way that this has stayed in the forefront. Absolutely, 100%. I love Liz. She's I've never met her. I follow her. I think she follows me too, sort of. You know how that goes. More of a courtesy than anything else. I don't really expect her to do that. And I know how courageous she is. And she stood there when nobody else would. Or few would, let's put it that way. And she suffered a lot of abuse from the media and from people like the FBI, CIA, deep state, politicians, the leftists, Marxists, etc., those who are protecting these vile, debauched actions that occur all around us, this criminal conduct. They'll attack her, and I know that. And like I said, often I've talked about Trump being like Cyrus. I talked about that early on, and that I would hope that he continues to go down that road. Cyrus of Persia, if you don't know who that person was in biblical history, you need to go look. Basically, he guaranteed that the Israelites could return to, primarily the Judahites, could return back to Jerusalem, to Palestine, to what would become Judea, and basically prosper and live their religion again. That's kind of basically what happened. So I look at him as that Cyrus, and he's been called that by other people. Kim Clement, for instance, and Trey Smith, who was very closely associated with Kim Clement. People like that. And I agree that's where that could have gone, and I think it is for the most part. But I also said that, there are indications that he's having some of the characteristics, shortcomings, idiosyncrasies of King Saul, and how King Saul lost his kingship. And I've talked about that. If you don't know exactly what it is, I won't spend time here to explain these two paths that Trump can be on. And he can kind of go back and forth depending upon, how he's responding to the Spirit, so to speak. And I know this is in, spiritual kind of talk that people don't like, but it's archetypal behavior. And that's why I bring it up, not just from the religious point of view. So I'm hoping that he does more on the Cyrus side than he does on the Saul, but occasionally, like this JFK release where he didn't release everything and he's holding off part of it till 2021, that's giving too much credence to the deep state and to the intelligence community, principally the CIA. Hence, a lot of people are saying, well, he's vanquished or the CIA, or they've reformed it. And they're trying to protect the CIA, Pompeo, and him, so that the institution doesn't get damaged. It needs to be damaged. It's not vanquished. It's not reformed. If it were, we wouldn't be having the problems with the First Amendment. Things like what's happened to Diamond and Silk. They went to the Congress yesterday, and they're sitting there and being berated by Congressman Johnson, who thinks that islands float on the ocean. That's disgusting. That's just absolutely disgusting. They've got more brains in their little fingernail on their little finger than that guy has in his entire brain. But at any rate, no, I don't mind castigating a guy like that. But my point is that I don't want to put any man up so high on a pedestal that we don't critically watch any man or woman watch what they're doing and call them out. That's a very dangerous position. People, and I'm not equating Trump with Hitler, but there's some similarities in the people that put him up on a pedestal with what they did to Hitler, okay? Thinking that he's the answer to all their problems. No, you're the answer to the problem. You're what got Trump there. Trump just happened to have the cojones and the means to be put there, okay? And I appreciate him making that sacrifice. He didn't have to do it, and I've talked about that before. He was doing fine in his own life. He didn't have to come into the public, so I understand what's happening there. But Liz Crokin put out a tweet this morning, and again, Liz, I love you. I don't know if you're listening to this or ever will. Like I said, you're courageous. I love everything you've done, but we've got to be careful when we go here. I'm just going to read your tweet to the audience, okay? This was made this morning. My timestamp says 3:18 a.m. this morning. A lot of you will probably agree with this, but I'm saying, whoa, be careful here. Quote, President Trump is anointed by God. He will lead us into world peace. And then in parentheses, North Korea right now, close parentheses. Please pray for our warrior of Jesus Christ. Behold, I give unto you power, she's quoting a scripture here. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Careful, Liz. Careful. I hold nothing against Donald Trump for his personal life in any way, shape, or form. None at all. And I could defend him in most of it, scripturally. However, there are other things that we have to be aware of, and I'm not going to enumerate those here. This isn't going to turn into a Trump bashing session either, because this is remarkable what he's done in North Korea. I've often called for him to clean up the things that are wrong in our own house before we're taking care of things in other nations. Certainly we should never be involved in regime change anymore, and what happened in Syria was very serious, and also the Russian, what they did last summer with the Russian sanctions bill. and what we saw in the budget bill. And there have been all kinds of arguments about that, but it didn't give him the leeway that people thought they would. But at any rate, the point is, he's done a lot of good going after the CIA front states. Okay, North Korea certainly one. Iran was taken over by the CIA in 1953 and was controlling the Shah. The thing I'm going to ask you to consider when you're constantly patting Trump on the back for everything is, do you think Russia's stupid? Do you think Putin's stupid? Do you think Putin doesn't know that the CIA runs Iran? Do you not think that Putin doesn't understand that the CIA runs North Korea? Of course he does. So my point is that why is our media constantly saying that Putin supports these vile, what have been, in a lot of ways, autocratic, vile institutions, countries, political institutions, political entities, if he knows that the CIA is involved? Has anybody ever asked that question of themselves? Because he's certainly not a friend of the CIA. He has refused to get, as Russia has, refused to get into the international monetary system run by the Rothschilds. Right? So what's he doing? I just want you to think about that. Something to consider in all of this. Now, Trump bombed the CIA drug labs in Afghanistan, but we shouldn't be increasing our activity there, and certainly not in Syria or anywhere else. And that worries me that we might go too far, because the military-industrial complex is still there pulling on his ear. And I don't know, I haven't really seen proof that he has the ability to deny that access. And I'm saying to you again, as I said of the title here, the CIA is not vanquished. We wouldn't be having problems with these First Amendment attacks, Second Amendment attacks, things like that, and the funds and all of that still being used against our constitutional republic if they were vanquished, okay? The CIA is not working for us. Trump outmaneuvered them in North Korea, and that's a great thing. At least that's the appearance at this point, and I think it's right. Liz mentioned it as well in another tweet. I think it was her. And she said that, Trump basically has kicked the CIA out of North Korea. By the way, another nuclear facility collapsed, which was pretty good. They've got some weapons that we've never heard of. But at any rate, in North Korea, Kim Jong-un may in fact be freed now from the CIA. We'll have to watch it. The problem here is going to be to prevent them from being fully controlled by China, as you know. But it's looking real good at this point that the North Korea and South Korean people will be reunited, that families long separated will see each other again under good terms, and that the people of North Korea will not suffer any longer. Let's hope that happens. And I applaud President Trump for that effort. Cut down the CIA's ability to wage war through North Korea against our constitutional republic and the restoration of that constitutional republic through the Second American Revolution. Excellent activity. Syria is another question. Doesn't have anything to do with that. Iran, yes, not as much as North Korea, but certainly partially, because we saw that with Obama trying to fund them in their nuclear program, okay? In other words, another CIA proxy. So does that mean that Hezbollah and all those are CIA proxies? I wouldn't think Hezbollah is. I think they're committed to the concept of a free Iranian government. Under the Ayatollahs, it's been not as good as it should be. I'm not certain that the CIA doesn't wield a lot of power there, but I don't believe it's as much as it used to be. That's my own personal take. I don't think it's what it was under the Shah. Not that they're not still active there, because it's a way to foment war. And they're very devious. So I'm cautiously supporting Trump in that regard. But the Iranian people, those good Persians, don't deserve death, injury, blockades, all of that kind of stuff. They just don't. And we really need to stop it. Saudi Arabia bombing Yemen, we're supporting, that's a corrupt regime. I don't care even if that looks like it's being reformed. There are ties between it and Israel that I've talked about before, that they're the same people, the Saudis and the Israelis, people that run those governments. And again, I'm not going to get into that here. I don't know that Trump really understands all the nuances of those connections, but that's despite the fact he's making these great inroads in the world. The problem of the world being in such a mess is primarily due to the powers that be here. And so I'm really concerned that he needs to really emphasize that. And maybe with North Korea out of the picture, he can do that. But when he said that some more JFK documents came out, but some others that are really apparently very serious won't be released until 2021. Now, that's kind of an interesting date, because it'll be in his second term if he wins. If he doesn't win and somebody else takes over, those things will never be released, most likely. Now, my Republican insider in California, he's said, well, Trump can't do everything in his first term. He just can't, because there's too much power lurking behind the scenes. And I understand that. The 9/11, for instance, revealing everything that happened in 9/11. This fellow told me, he says, I just don't think Trump will be able to do that his first term, maybe in his second. Well, the JFK thing, probably the same idea, but that proves that the CIA isn't vanquished. Now, is Trump trying to protect national security information on these other things? The enemy already knows. The only people that he's keeping it from are us. Bottom line. So if the CIA was involved, which it was, in the JFK assassination, at least if not pulling the trigger, whatever, they were certainly aware of it and were manipulating the circumstances to bring it about. As so many have said, including Lou Dobbs, this is wrong, and Trump should have gone ahead and done it. So that's one of the things that I call him on. And people say, oh, he knows more than you do, Roy. That's not the point. The point is that we know that these corrupt organizations need to have the light of day shined upon them, and it has to happen in greater detail than it has so far. Now, on top of that, we also have a situation where Ken Starr, who defended President Clinton on that whole thing back in the 90s, he was on Fox the other day, and they're equating some things that are happening with that entire situation that Ken Starr was over as a special in that special situation, that special counsel prosecutor. He wasn't Bill Clinton's attorney. I meant he was the special prosecutor in that case, Ken Starr. The problem with the Ken Starr thing, is that if you really recognize what happened there, Ken Starr was, in fact, helping Bill Clinton, because he moved the investigation from the treasonous aspects of giving China and North Korea missile and nuclear weapons technology over to the Monica Lewinsky whole sex thing. I did not have sex with that woman, or whatever, right? So in effect, I just said that he wasn't, he's a special prosecutor, but he moved that whole thing out of the realm of the treason, or the inappropriate bombing, as it turned out later, the machinations, however you say it, depends on what part of the country you're in. But anyway, the bombing of Yugoslavia. former Yugoslavia. That whole split up that happened there after Tito died. Well, which was earlier, but then it really came into a problem area in the 90s. By design, because they were taking out the Christian Serbs, and there's a lot of disagreement historically on that, and different people have chosen sides on it. But I was there. I kind of saw what was going on. It was kind of a continuing war on Christianity is really what it was, and we're seeing that today. But at any rate, the point is that Ken Starr, he sounds like a very nice guy, but considering what he did, and maybe, who did he really represent in that thing? Did he represent the American people? Does anybody represent the American people? Hardly. I look at Jeff Sessions and how he said that Stephen Myrie, the U.S. attorney in Vegas, was doing such a good job in the Bundy case. Well, as of today, they're always going after patriots and Christians and conservatives and et cetera, et cetera. But they never go after, they use this immunity BS for government employees. They're the first ones that should be prosecuted for violating the law. Stephen Myrie should be arrested for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and other crimes, along with the prosecutors in that case that assisted him in doing that, along with BLM agents that did what they did, including trying to war upon the American people in an unholy situation, and FBI agents that have done the same thing. Yet we still have none of that going on. They're slapped on the wrist, or like a police officer that wrongly shoots somebody is never held accountable anymore. The taxpayer ends up paying the bill. Well, that's not punishing the police officer that's done this criminal attack. And there have been several incidents. Believe me, I don't whitewash the police. Okay, I was told that they have to be held to a higher standard than everybody else, but that just isn't the case in reality. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite, and it's very disturbing. That's why I'm so much against glorifying the police and the military. The police not so much as the military. The police is a little different situation if they're not militarized. But Trump's militarizing them just like Obama did. So, like I say, I see some real problems. But I think you can see my concerns here and why I've said what I've said. Okay. Another couple things, and then I'll go to the chat and see what you have to say. I probably ought to pull this a little closer so I can see it. Hopefully the sound is okay. It looks like from the graph that it's all right. This is kind of a weird thing here. I'm going to talk a little spiritual stuff for just a minute. I had some questions from some people about, and I'm still going to do an entire video on this, but I kind of want to touch on it right now. Maybe a series of videos to go along with my religion series. I've often talked about being able to rightly divide the Word of God. It's even mentioned in the New Testament. I don't consider the Bible to be the infallible Word of God in so much that it's always God talking. Maybe that He allows some of that to get in there. That's certainly a possibility. But that there are two forces at work in sacred writ. And depending upon, like in life, what path you take tells you what side you're on. Okay? And both are evident in the Bible in particular. And I mean from the Torah, from the beginning of the Torah in Genesis all the way to the end in Revelations in the New Testament. Well, I want to point out some things. This is going to sound really, really odd, but just let it percolate for a little while. A lot of our dislike for the sexual relationship between men and women came from Christianity, the interpretation of some of Jesus' sayings, and the interpretation on what happened in the Garden of Eden. And yet the New World Order wants to destroy sex and the man and woman relationship. Why? Jesus is quoted as saying that in the resurrection there is no male or female. Now the interpretation of that is based on euphemisms of today rather than the euphemisms of that time, but that just goes to make my point. So that's one example. So why all this transgenderism, homosexuality, pedophilia, and all that? Because the scriptures are interpreted to say that the creation of man and woman by God was something sick and disgusting and evil. And that the only place you do it is here on earth, and it doesn't exist anywhere else because that's the spiritual realm. Well, gee, in the New World Order idea, they're just bringing heaven to earth already. They're just fulfilling Jesus Christ's prayer that, Father, thy will be done, like what is heaven comes to earth, right? That will be done in heaven as it is on earth as it is in heaven. Well, then why don't we just become sexless creatures? Just like the scriptures seem to say we should be. Maybe the New World Order is bringing that heaven to earth by doing what they're doing. Do you see the argument here? Well, another part of it is the rapture. And that's going to save everybody from having to go through these experiences because God's going to save you from it. And one of the euphemisms I've talked about is getting caught up with him in the clouds. Wow. Well, that was a euphemism at the time for having, so to speak, the fog of war lifted so you see clearly. But there's another aspect of this. What is emerging in the control grid, in the panopticon, for controlling us? What has emerged? The cloud. That we have access to the cloud. I don't think they called it that by accident. It's another mimicking, another substitution, or the other interpretation in the ability to divide the Word of God and to understand what's going on here. Sergeant Report did a video here a few days ago, and it's called Antichrist Infrastructure. I hope you all have seen it. The Rise of AI and the Fall of Mankind. And that's why I started thinking about these things, because I don't think that we have wisdom. I think that we try to see things in the light of our own prejudices and biases. And I'm not saying that God is evil, but he did say that he created good and evil. So while I really laud Sean in his presentation of Antichrist infrastructure, and I really do believe that he's right about the AI being the substitution of Satan, for lack of a better term, being unable to be born as an entity into a human body through a woman, because that's been separated. He could do so with a silicon robot with AI intelligence and take control of it. I think that's very, very plausible, and I think that's what CERN is partially involved in, and this entire Silicon Valley deal. So I think he's right about that. But the point is that we need to rightly divide the Word of God, and I would do this. Man is in a fallen nature, but the sexes were created prior to the fall, ladies and gentlemen, not after. Okay? Let's think about that. There's another scripture, of course, and it says that if God doesn't intervene, there would be no flesh left. So these people are out to destroy it. I think God likes our male-female relationship. He wants it done in honorable ways, but that is a very important and eternal principle, not just for here. God doesn't give us commandments that are solely for this world. They're eternal. They exist everywhere. They apply everywhere. Just think about that. Again, I'm really happy that Rudy Giuliani is in there helping President Trump. It's about time. I don't think that Giuliani is actually going to help Mueller in his support of Trump. Okay, a lot of people think Mueller's in there to support Trump, and you've heard me talk about that before. No, I don't think that's the case. But I think Giuliani is going to make the realization of what's really happening with what Mueller's finding evident to Mueller, to the point where he's probably going to be backed into a corner. And I hope that Giuliani can bring out the axe and cut his head off, figuratively speaking. Okay, I think that's pretty much, I mean, that's nothing there that's earth-shattering or revelatory. Just kind of a viewpoint on some of the things that I see going on. We're waiting for the information on the emails. Oh, that's another thing. Trey Gowdy and Goodlatte made an agreement with basically the deep state, to only get so many of the Clinton emails. Trey Gowdy, and I've called him this before. He'd be much better off working at Broadway theater than as a congressman or as a lawyer. He gives up more ground than he ever takes. If he was a subordinate commander, I was a commander, and he was my subordinate commander, I'd fire his butt. This guy talks a big talk, but he never follows through. He never does the job. Now, okay, yeah, congressmen are limited to some extent, but why this? Why would Trey Gowdy and Goodlatte, who is actually, Goodlatte's been doing some good stuff, why would they strike a deal with the DOJ for the Hillary Clinton documents to only get a fraction of them? Who are they trying to appease here? What I want, and I hope most conservative, Christian, patriot, constitutional-loving Americans want, is for Donald Trump to use this power that he has to take the U.S. Marshals and aspects of the DOD and raid the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, etc. It really needs to be done. Maybe he's destroying their support, defensive, offensive infrastructure elsewhere, like in North Korea, etc. But this by Trey Gowdy and Goodlatte are just, this is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. So, as a matter of fact, my friend says that this is pure insanity, and I have to agree with that. So last thing I'll bring up, because I think it's important. I've been saying a long time that Trump needs to seize the initiative and go after these people and stop gently, going around like he's trying to prevent from crushing eggs. And this is where I get critical of him, and I hope people understand. It's not because I dislike Trump, but it's because, okay, yeah, I might not know the entire game plan, right? But there are indications, though, that some of these negotiations are not in the best interests of the end result that we want. And it was interesting that Jerome Corsi yesterday came out. I want to read you a few of his tweets, which I also commented on one or two of them. So we knew that the JFK thing, Trump is holding back still certain aspects of it from 2021. It's been over 50 years, for crying out loud. What are we trying to protect here? The reformation of the CIA? No, because that's not happening. Let me just read you a couple things that Corsi said here. And Corsi has been very much, and here we go, in support in decoding Q, right? And I've been very critical of Q for a lot of reasons. Not that it's not good information, again, but I'm critical of it for things that directly happened in conjunction with my association with it that I saw, okay? And I'm very suspect of some things. People regard it almost like a religion, that It is very cult-like. You don't agree with them. They're so insecure. It's like people in a religion. They're so insecure in their faith that they have to go. And people say, well, they're going to try to convert somebody else because they love them. Well, a lot of it is verification of their own bias. If somebody else goes along with it in a religion, joins it, then they feel that, okay, if that person, this is subconscious. It's not always about love for the other person. It isn't always not about love, but the point is it's a verification of their own bias. So that's what I saw happening in the Q deal. And for President Trump, too, as a matter of fact, same kind of thing. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. So I've called this out for a long time. Well, Corsi, let me just read you a few of his tweets if you don't have Twitter. He's put out a lot of stuff this morning, so let me go back to last night. He's really complaining about all of this redacted material that's coming out and how bad it is. Okay, so this was 11 hours ago. Let me read this one. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Quote, so, exactly how is it you guys lost your nerve, real Donald Trump and QAnon and Jeff Sessions? Jeff Sessions put me to sleep today, blah, blah, blah. Where are the indictments? What? Comey got your knickers bunched up? I can't believe Corsi's talking like this. And about those redacted FBI lovers, 10 pages? JFK 2021? It's a joke, right? He's talking to President Trump and QAnon. And kind of Jeff Sessions at the same time. Let me read another one. Quote, hey QAnon and real Donald Trump, when do you call a plumber? When the toilet is backed up, like it is right now with redacted and sealed Strzok, Page, and JFK documents. Makes the joint stink. We the people have a solution. Take a vacation. Go eat some escargot and take a good book with you. Dr. Corsi, I love you. A lot of people got on the Q bandwagon because they were interested in it. But a lot of them did it because they saw it as a source of income. That's why I refuse to go and read these things and decode them or discuss them. There are thousands of people doing that. You can listen to anybody you want, about the Q post. And I refuse to do it. Corsi got involved in it, and there's some reasons why he probably did. Whatever, I'm not attacking him for it, but here he has the guts to come out and say it the way I felt. This is real Jerome Corsi here, okay? So I read that one. That's not the last one. Let me read you another one. This was about the same time he's doing all this last night. He says, I got a good, this is quoting him, I got a good idea, real Donald Trump and QAnon. I got a good idea. Why don't you guys go on vacation until 2021? We the people can fire Jeff Sessions and duke it out with coup d'etat criminals. Maybe we can hire somebody to read you that little book I just wrote. Maybe a good idea. He's pissed. And rightly so. Rightly so. I'm going to keep reading this. This is really good for me because it's almost a vindication. And if you all don't know how much he's supported QAnon, you'll understand why this is so important. Okay? And here's another one. Look, QAnon and real Donald Trump, enough is enough. POTUS has enormous powers. Mind if we, the people, borrow them for a while? If redacted 46 pages are the Moab, forget it. Why did DJT, that's Donald J. Trump, cover up JFK papers until 2021? He said 2012, but he meant 2021. Bamboozled again? I guess Jeff Sessions is in charge of the executive branch. I'm going to keep reading this. There are a bunch of these. Here's another one. What can be so secret, squirrel, after 50 years that proof CIA killed JFK? What's the matter, real Donald Trump? Afraid of exposing Alan Dulles? What? Did you forget to talk with QAnon, the Washington Post, about the 2021? Who are you protecting? Do you hear what he's saying here? Next, I guess you will pardon Obama and Hillary. And I agree with Jerome Corsi. He's been a great patriot as far as trying to protect Donald Trump's interests and using QAnon to help expose this stuff. But he's starting to see the same problems I do. Why are we protecting the deep state and the intelligence community that has wreaked so much evil in the world? Why? And it's members like Hillary Clinton. I'm going to read another one. What? Real Donald Trump broken by the CIA? Delays release of JFK documents until 2021? CIA wants docs sealed forever to cover deep state 1961 coup d'etat killing of Kennedy. Donald J. Trump just capitulated. Deep state in control. QAnon, what is past is prologue, not future. QAnon also often says future proves past. Well, he's just changed that already. He says past is the prologue. In other words, same old thing, right? What has happened will continue to happen. And you guys, President Trump, aren't changing it. So he says, what is past is prologue. Get it? He's pissed. If QAnon 8chan says we have a voice, okay, real Donald Trump was right. Fire everybody in DOJ, FBI, tear down the building, start over again. If Jeff Sessions won't prosecute the coup d'etat criminals, what good is he? POTUS has enormous powers. Mind if we the people borrow them? Another one. I am completely disgusted with DOJ, FBI still being run by Obama and Hillary. As I've said, Donald Trump is not in control of the government. How long have I been saying that? He might be in control of aspects of it, certain members of the Marshal Service, the Marines, certain aspects of the DOD, but not the rest of it. And people will say, well, it's because they're not cooperating because of the SES and CIRCLE and all that. That's why he has to get tough. That's why we haven't got much time. And I think Corsi's beginning to realize that. Let me start reading this one again. I am completely disgusted with DOJ, FBI still being run by Obama and Hillary. In other words, Donald Trump, you're not doing it. We are running out of patience trusting Jeff Sessions, and you, President Trump, and you, QAnon. Redacted 46 pages today from Strzok Page, worse than a joke. A national security crisis as a coup d'etat continues. Real Donald Trump, fire everybody. And I agree. He can use he can use this article, and I call for this, a year ago? Article 2, Section 2, to create directorships using reactivated military people and the militia, okay? The militia being the people that he calls. I don't mean the people running around thinking they can fight the military of the United States and their little tactical training, and the locals. One thing to protect your neighborhood, it's another thing to think that you're going to take on the government. Okay, that's a whole. But under Donald Trump's authority, you can bring these people in to run these three-letter agencies or to get rid of them altogether, which is what he should do. I think that's all. I don't think I'll read any more. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. I could keep going, but you get my drift. So, the great patriot who wrote a book, The Fight to Save President Donald Trump. He just put that book out. I should have brought it up and shown it to you. I read it. Okay, and he's been working with the 8chan and the QAnon very closely for a long time, and he's saying the same thing now that I've been saying since Donald Trump was elected. And he came out and he said, when he was asked by Bartiromo, I think is her name, Bartiromo, I think it was her, and she asked him if he was going to go after the Clintons and prosecute them. He says, oh, I don't think so. They're good people. And I hit the roof. I mean, he could have said, well, maybe not. We're going to see how that works out. But to call them good people, and I just hit the roof. And then the situation where he didn't prosecute Clinton, then the first Syria missile strike over the bogus chemical attack, and then the Russian sanctions bill last summer, and then of course this new strike on Syria. I don't like what I'm seeing. So back to Liz Crokin, let's be careful about saying that Trump is anointed by God. He may have been put there like Saul, yeah, but that doesn't mean he can't do wrong, Liz. And we need to call him on it when he does. He's being anointed by God doesn't mean that you're infallible. Like Saul was anointed by the prophet of God, Samuel. So was David, King David. Neither of those men were infallible. Saul to the point of death. He disobeyed God so badly, even worse than the adultery of David, that God allowed him to be killed. Think about that. Okay. Let's go to this chat. I've been talking too much. Let's see if anybody here has got any questions that we can answer. F-51 Mustang type. Wrong again, Roy, as usual. Okay, as long as you don't call me a name, you can disagree with me, that's fine. But F-51 Mustang, you call me a name one time and I'll block you, okay, if I see it. Okay, understanding differences of opinion, that's fine. Debate's important. This is good about citizens arrest. Yeah, and I am, having been a police officer, I understand citizens arrest. I've used citizens arrest before as a private citizen, but it's a tricky road to hoe. It's a very, very narrow balance beam. Okay, it's not like you think. In most states, and I'm not even sure how the federal law would apply, but in most states, you can make an arrest of a misdemeanor. Okay. You can make an arrest that's committed in your presence, a misdemeanor in your presence. You can arrest for a felony not committed in your presence if you know for a fact that it was a felony that was committed and that the person that you're arresting was the person that committed it. It's not like the police that can do it on probable cause, okay? We're talking about almost absolute, beyond a doubt type stuff, okay? It's a very tricky road, especially when you start talking about treason and the type of criminal pedophilia behavior, human trafficking, corruption, etc. that's going on. It's not that easy, folks. I wish it were, but it's not. That's why I say that President Trump doesn't have to wait for Congress to do all these things that he needs done. He can activate, under his national emergency order, executive order, he can activate Article 2, Section 2, and bring on people to do these jobs if he can't find people. He just needs to have the courage to do it. That's why at the end of these transmissions I say that God will give him the spirit of discernment and that he will then also have the courage to do the right thing. Big difference. Knowing and having the courage are two different things. Yeah, and then now Jimmy Florida, rightly so, says, be patient, folks. This is deep state surgery. I realize that, Jimmy, and you're absolutely right. I realize that. But you got to understand now, okay, you're following the QAnon explanation of patience, of trust the plan. Well, of course he's been spouting that for a long time, and you see how he feels now. There are some indications that the deep state is still very much in control. The CIA has not been vanquished. Pompeo did not clean house. Okay? He's not. So patience is only good if you're seeing results. The results we're seeing aren't as good as you might think. I was going to do a video on this. I might still do it. We keep hearing about all this great economic recovery. And I've said several times in videos that I've made, I go around towns where I visit, I travel a lot, and places that were open a week ago are closed today. This is still going on. I can take my video camera, and maybe I should, because I'm really getting sick and tired of hearing about how we're recovering and all these new jobs and all that. There are people losing their jobs today. Businesses are closing down. Whole areas are closed down. So don't tell me that this economic recovery is anything more than a paper game, because that's what it is. As much as I appreciate the efforts being made by Donald Trump, there are still games being played. The stock market being at, what is it, 22,000 or higher now? That's not good, ladies and gentlemen. The stock market's not the real indicator of our economic welfare, our economic strength. It's businesses down at the local level. It's people working. It's productivity. Now, Donald understands that, and I know. But stop looking at the stock market as the end all for how good everything is. Take your camera and go out and start looking at all these places that are shutting down. I see far more businesses shutting down than I see new ones being started. Now, some of that can be blamed on the internet. Right, I understand that. But a lot of these are service businesses, not just retail. Whole swaths of them. It's not really the way we're being told. And Coulter. She predicted President Trump was going to become president. And yet she's critical of him, and rightly so. I'm sure that if they met for dinner, she would be very cordial and really appreciate being in, Donald Trump and being able to talk about things and laugh and enjoy it. But I think she would probably call it the way she sees it too, and that's the way it should be. So, I've had disagreements with Coulter, especially over the radiation from Fukushima. What she said there, I was just like, whoa, what planet is she living on? But, I didn't call her names for it. She just needed a little education. Does she need education in this stuff about Trump? No, I think she's right on. I think she knows what she's talking about. Skullbro, Roy Potter, tricky down Republicans. How's that working? Probably not so good. Roy USO uninformed. Okay, you can still disagree with me, Mustang, but I'm not reading any more of your stuff. Okay, I'm just not. This is interesting. Little Light, Ultra Bright. No one is talking about Syrian ambassador to the UN accusing U.S. of importing genetically modified. Whoa, 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 whoa. What was that? Hold on there. I got to get back to that one. That was very interesting. No one is talking about Syrian ambassador to UN accusing U.S. of importing genetically modified, it's in quotes, soldiers into their country. Well, you're absolutely right. Saudi Arabia and Israel, as I've said, are one and the same. And Trump is going along with them on this thing in Syria, and that's very, very troubling to me. Very troubling. It's one of the things that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Knowing what I know about the history there. Who's Donald Trump trying to appease? The American people or Israel? The American people or the Zionists? Zionists are not Jews necessarily. Biden proved that. He called himself a Zionist. You see, there's some problems here. Being anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitic because there are Orthodox Jews that refuse to be Zionists and that call them out. And even the state of Israel. And I've talked about that before. So, yes, I agree with you there, Ultralight. There's a problem. And Syria protects Christians. And, the MSM is the CIA. And for Donald Trump to keep listening to the MSM and trying to court them is wrong. It's just wrong. Absolutely. Okay, this is a good point. Shirley Schmidt. The foreigners are able to get small business administration loans when Americans cannot. Yeah, especially if they're illegal immigrants or migrant refugees, as they like to use the term. Multiculturalism is a danger. There's only a point at which it's a good thing, and at some point it becomes a very bad thing, and a culture, the host culture, loses its identity. And I've said this before, that's not what we want. But that's what's being forced on us, and it's part of the New World Order plan to make everything the same so they can control it. Even down to the point of having us have nanotech in our bodies, and they're able to control it by 5G. And that brings up another point. I had both Gene Rice and Vicki Davis on, as most of you may know, for those live interviews. And that was very important information because, here we go with Q again. Q has us focused in this one area, and that's what a magician will do. I'm not saying this is necessarily what they're attempting to, but it is suspicious to me. They're keeping us all on this government stuff and, what's happening with all these different little things that Q finds important, and we're totally forgetting about the stuff that's a danger that's right around the corner. The 5G, the vaccinations, the RFID chips, the nanotech, the stratospheric atmosphere, aerosol injection, all of that, which is a danger, a clear and present danger. And I'm not saying that the other stuff isn't, but it's like we're forced to just take our attention off of it. Now, those are very serious problems. And nobody's addressing them. Nobody's really addressing the First Amendment issue. Like I just mentioned a few minutes ago with Diamond and Silk going before Congress and having to put up with that insane idiot Johnson who thinks that islands float. No support for the First Amendment. They're letting these organizations that should be public utilities get away with criminal acts, actually. what should be criminal acts if they're not. Who's in control? Yeah, we got a problem. And we can't be myopic. And we have to make preparations across the board. Yeah, Subway closing stores. Yeah, and Ford only making 2 cars. Who's saying that? Samuel Papandrea, is that how you say your name? Samuel, thank you. Perfect example. Perfect example. If we're doing so well, why would that be the case? Oh, supply and demand? And I read the story about Ford. Well, most people want SUVs. Well, where's the innovation to come up with some new ideas? It doesn't exist because there's not a market for it. Julia, you have a service business and we are booming. Good. Well, I'm not saying all of them are having problems. I didn't mean that. And if you are, good for you. You happen to have come into a niche that you're doing well, and I'm very happy for that. But that's not the case across the board. But good for you. It says 2 things. One is you're working hard, and 2, you know what you're doing. Okay? And you're able to compensate for these changes, and that's good. I'm not a businessman. Okay? I'm not. I was trained in other areas, so I've been in the business periphery. My wife was actually she was what they call a hired gun. I think I've talked about this before. She was a very highly respected sales lady that even did television commercials. She was sought out to do it because she was so good at selling. She tried to teach me. I did okay, but I was nothing like her. Never will be either. Okay, so yeah, they're not helping Americans. Why is it that, and Trump's trying to cut off the social net for the illegal immigrants. And that's the right way it should be. Americans should be taken care of by our own tax system, right? The way we're working things out. But no, Americans are spat upon. Think about this, and this is a perfect example. Are these immigrants coming across the border required to have passports? They might be required to, but is it forced on them? Enforced? No. But I'll tell you what, if you're an American and you don't have a passport and you go to Mexico and try to come back, they ain't going to let you in. Why is it that Americans are the ones that always take it in the shorts? And Trump's still assisting that. This whole thing, this idiocy of having to have a passport to go to Mexico or Canada is ridiculous. That should be done away with. Oh, is that the incentive behind the North American Union to make us want that? Probably. See, the corporations say, oh, okay, you don't want to give us the North American Union so that we can have these trade barriers dropped. Well, we'll do this to you, and Bush will do it, right? Yeah, if his famous statement, if you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. Yeah, prick. So here we are. Okay, the American people don't want the North American Union. Okay, so we'll make it so they have to have passports to go to Mexico and Canada. We'll fix them. Trump hasn't done away with that. Trump hasn't supported the First Amendment the way he should. Not even his own followers have been beaten in the streets. Nobody that helped to support the Trump campaign, as Mike Cernovich pointed out, was hired by the Trump administration, or damn few. What the hell's going on here? And then we have these situations, of course, he's pointing out. So Trump's not perfect, Liz. I'm sorry, he isn't. And you have to be suspicious of any politician, even Trump. Praise him when he does right, pray that he does the right thing. But if you fail to call him out when he does the wrong thing, you're a cultist. And that's just the bottom line. Okay, let's see where else we are. How long have we been going on? Oh my goodness, it's been over an hour. You notice I'm doing the relaxed thing today. I don't have the map. I don't have a tie. I'm in the living room, just kind of relaxing. I like to do that once in a while. I hope it's okay with you all. Yeah, you need a passport to cross North American borders, JK, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's true. Okay, calendar truth. Roy, don't you think that the opening of the U.S. Embassy on the 7th anniversary of Israel is a major milestone of the New World Order and dangerous provocation? Wow. Well, you're kind of mixing 2 things there. You're not incorrect. My opinion of that at this point in time is that Trump probably does know the problems with Israel, that it was funded and actually created by the Rothschilds and by the by the Jews, not Judahites, and there's a difference, okay? So I think basically it's not really a slap in the face of the Islamic people as much as it is an effort by Trump to try to derail the New World Order and their claim on Jerusalem and Palestine for their plans for the future. It's a little complicated for me to address here, but actually that was one of the moves that I thought was good. He's really, and Netanyahu, maybe he's not as smart as I think he is. Netanyahu kind of, was real all smiles and thought that was a great thing. But in fact, I'm sure that the Rothschilds in England were pulling their hair out when Trump did that. I think that they realized that this was a move by him to slow down their efforts in their plans. I'll just put it that way. That might be a supposition way beyond the truth on my part, but that's kind of how I look at that whole thing. At first I was a little upset, and then I got to thinking about what he was trying to do, especially when you understand the history of how Israel came about. I don't consider Israel to be the Israel talked about in the Bible, not at all. The state of Israel has nothing to do with the restoration of Israel in the last days. Zero. I don't care what Trey Smith says or anybody else, or any born-again Christian or evangelical. That state of Israel has nothing to do with the restoration of Israel. It has everything to do with Edomite, Arab bloodlines. Oh, okay. I was just reminded. Somebody asked if I've been following the global currency. As I've often said, I am not an expert on the financial system. I should probably take the time to become more knowledgeable of that. All I know is that that there's a wise reason for the Constitution calling for the use of gold and silver as legal tender. We've seen it with the abuses of the Federal Reserve and the bankers. Jesus Christ, even in the Bible, literally hated the bankers because he understood the destructive power that they wield and the evil that they have. So much so that he beat them, to get out of the temple. The bankers and this whole global currency thing is wrong. Again, it has to do with multiculturalism and trying to bring in the one world government, obviously, and destroying. It's like I said the other day, I love the French culture the way it used to be. I love the Italian culture, the British culture, sort of. Certainly the Russia. The point is that diversity separated by national boundaries is a good thing, as long as those differences aren't fed to be evil, which is really what the banks do. Do you understand? It's always the banks that foment these wars, and now they're using it to try to get total control over the entire world, and they've succeeded by and large. And that's why I'm hard on Donald Trump. I see the inroads. I don't expect everything at once, but these little give-ins to like the attacks on Syria and not dismantling the CIA and some of these other things, I see as a real problem. So we'll look. Okay, yeah, the money changers, right. Trust but verify. Bliss. Yes, Bliss. How you doing? Yeah, very, very much so. Always. Yeah, Laura P. It's okay to disagree. It doesn't make you a cultist or a shill. I agree with that. Absolutely. And that's all I ask. Debate is important. We can get in a heated debate. That's one thing. But to start calling people names and to call them, traitors and all that stuff, or blasphemers, as I was accused of being, and now that Jerome Corsi's probably going to get attacked by the Q cultists too. But you have to be able to think outside of what you're fed. You have to be able to do that. I don't know. Angel Soul, that's very good. This is not being talked about. She says, what was the deal that Trump reached with Jerry Brown about the border? I don't know. I would hope that would be this. Jerry, I'm telling you to activate the National Guard and send them on the border. If you don't do that, I'm going to send the marshals out to arrest your ass. That's probably what the deal was, okay? That's what it should be. And where's Sessions again? You know, we hear all these threats about him with Mayor of San Francisco. Sessions. Laura P., believing in Q is not cultist. No, I didn't say that. Let me clarify it, okay? No. Following Q, trying to verify the puzzles and all that, no. That's not being cultic. What's cultic, however, is what has happened so often. And I was a prime example of this. They called me a blasphemer. They called me a traitor. They called me a betrayer because I pointed out some problems in Q. In other words, I became critical of certain things that happened to Q. So if you're going to protect something, it's like religion. People in a religion, they often have this normalcy bias, this prejudice, where if you say, you've seen it, you go talk to somebody about their religious ideas and you call attention to something that you think is wrong, and all of a sudden they attack you because you're attacking what they use to verify their prejudice. Do you understand? So that's cultic behavior. Following Q in and of itself isn't cultic behavior. You're absolutely right. But if you attack somebody for not wanting to follow Q, like your religion, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are a prime example, and I used to be one, so I can say this. You go knock on a door, you're a tractor, you go knock on a door, this is the people's one chance in their life to be saved. And they don't even use that terminology, but for lack of a better term. So you knock on the door, you say, here's a Watchtower in Awake, we'd like to, invite you. And the people say, we're not interested. You shut the door and you walk away and say, they're going to hell, they're going to be annihilated. And that's literally how it was. And this is back when I was a youngster. It's a very long time ago, but I think it's pretty much the same. A lot of religions, that's cultic behavior. Or there was this guy on, and I forget his name, but he was a preacher, and he said that QAnon was a prophet and that I was blaspheming because I didn't go along with Q. Q's a faceless anon. Forgot your name. Sorry. Is a faceless anon. That's almost like worshiping Lucifer, the creation of men's hands rather than worshiping God. No, I don't owe Q any allegiance. I don't owe him any respect, or them. What I owe is to look at it, which I did, and decide whether or not that is something I'm interested in. And I was up to a point, and then I stopped because I saw problems. But because I chose not to stay with that group, the cultic behavior kicked in, and they attacked me just like a religion would call you an apostate. That's cultic behavior. And I see that in the Q thing a lot. Sorry, I keep getting these messages, and they have to do with what we're doing here. Okay, yeah, I already know. Okay, Q has been compromised. Now that's how I look at it. And now Corsi, one of these he actually said, didn't I read it to you? Basically, that's what he said. There have been imposters. Did I read the one where he talked about imposters? Did I read that one? Because I called that back in late December. I was still going along with it until the DEFCON 1 debacle and the change in the candor and the cadence of the Q posts, and the way because I do word analyses. I do analyses to see if the person is the same person writing, and it wasn't. And if you don't know how to do that, I can't explain to you how to do it here, but it has to do with taking the size of the words, the number of the words in the paragraph, and there's a formula that you use to do that analysis. Let me see if I can find this one and then we'll close, I think. Because he actually calls, says, "What's going on here? Are imposters using you, your Twitter accounts?" I'm going to read it to you. I don't know why I failed to do that. Maybe I did do it and I just don't remember. But let me see if I can find that one. Okay, hold on here. You'll have to pardon me. I know this is very rude. Like Lionel says, "This is rude to do this," but it's really important that you hear this if you didn't hear it. And for this type of thing, that's the cultic behavior. You call somebody that no longer agrees with you an apostate. Not that you have a change of opinion, but that somehow you've become less than a human being. That's really what they're talking about. Okay, I'm here. Let me see if I can find this one where he talks about imposters. Some of these have been deleted, I noticed, so that could happen too. It looks like that. I'm having a hard time finding it. But that's what he basically said. He said, imposters have taken over your account. I may have saved it. Let me go back here. I may have saved it back here. Hold on a second. Maybe I can find it this way. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you can see this. Let me. I don't think I read this one. It was probably done earlier than the others, and I just didn't go to the right spot. So let me see if you can see this. Okay, you see there's, can you read that? You see what it says there? Real Donald Trump and QAnon, you guys better watch out. Imposters have stolen your identities. How long ago did I say that? December, but certainly after January 4th. I'll read the whole thing to you. Real Donald Trump and QAnon, you guys better watch out. Imposters have stolen your identities. POTUS waiting until 2021 to release JFK papers. What happened to complete disclosure? Redacted 46 pages of FBI lovers. I guess Mueller wins and Hillary Obama still control DOJ, FBI, CIA. One of the greatest QAnon readers and decoders, I don't mean to, I'm not making fun of Cody, of course, but he really wasn't decoding, but at any rate, he was reviewing them, and he's even saying he's seeing some problems now. Well, good on him. I appreciate the fact that he's willing to be critical. Critical thinking, you cannot give it up in exchange for cultic behavior of going along with the crowd so that you're not made fun of or denigrated. And that's what cultists do. Okay? In the Mormon Church, they called me an apostate because I found... I've had a lot of experience with cults, and I joined a lot of these religions as a young man trying to find the truth. But as long as I went along with what they said, and I didn't study on my own and come up with questions, I was fine. But the minute I had a question, I became an apostate. That happened in Catholicism. It happened in the Witnesses. It happened in the Baptists. It happened in the Mormon Church. It even happened. Well, I didn't join the Jewish religion, but I ran into some problems in a synagogue when I was investigating that. I know cultic behavior, and that's why I gave up on Q, because it no longer became information. It became a way to divide people. You talk about, they're bringing, people are coming in to divide the Q community. No, Q did that themselves. At least the Anons. I'm not calling out all the Anons, not all of them. But the followers of Q became so radicalized in their cultic behavior that I just had enough of it. I didn't want it anymore, and I don't have anything to do with it. Except when I'm asked about it in passing. That's the only time I do. Okay, well, crap. We've been going on for a long time here. I didn't mean for it to go along that way. Coming up on an hour and 20 minutes. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We got into a little bit of the chat, not as much as maybe I should have. And I apologize for that, but you know how it goes. I'll take one more here. Yeah, Karen Carpenter. Really? Karen Carpenter? Wow. Is that your real name, Karen? Yeah, she was one of my favorite singers. Monsanto to be added to spraying. Yeah, Monsanto's a problem. Absolutely. Okay, somebody's saying, Cindy, oh, this is a good one. This is a good one, because here we go. Cinda Schuster. I am not sure about you, Roy. You told everyone to go watch AIM when the traders that run AIM said they talked to Q privately when Q made it only too clear that Q talks to no one in private. Wrong. You're not. You're really not. You're really not informed, Cinda. That's not right. You don't know the history of Q. You don't understand Cicada. Okay? You don't understand the things that DeFango said. You don't understand about the British company run by MI6 that has a social engineering protection appliance, which is basically an AI system. Okay? You don't know about those things. You really don't understand. AIM are not traitors, okay? They have, see, this is what I'm talking about, the cultic behavior. Why do you call somebody a traitor? Because they disagree with your analysis or lack of analysis. Am I a little upset at you? Yeah, because I just got explaining what a cultic behavior is, and now you're showing it. What has AIM done to be traitors? Do you know what treason even is? Go read it in the Constitution. You obviously don't know what treason is. And it's obviously not what you think it is. AIM might have a different take on things. They've done a lot of good. Do I like everything they do? No. I'm even critical of Alex Jones, but I sure as hell I'm not going to call him a traitor. You don't, and as far as Q talking to them privately, go look up DeFango, okay, Cinda. He claimed it's been like 6 months ago, maybe longer, that he was involved in writing the Q questions. That it was originally a cicada operation. And they had contact with DeFango. Does that mean that that's true? No. I don't know all of the things that they did to vet those people. But look at me. I became convinced after January 4th that Q was not what they said they were. And I stand by that to this day. Does that make me a traitor? No. I'm just getting my news from other sources. I don't need to go to CNN. Because I don't choose to go by CNN, does that make me a traitor? Or a blasphemer? Come on. Come on, Cinda. And I'm going to end there. So that's the kind of thing I can't handle. Is that the kind of people I'm really dealing with on here? Really? Is that the level of intellectual dishonesty that I have to deal with? Am I wasting my time? I'm sorry to insult you, but that's ridiculous. That's the exact type of intellectual dishonesty and cronyism I can't handle. Because that's going to destroy us, Cinda. Worshipping Donald Trump as an anointed by God is going to destroy us. We have to be critical of our political leaders and of our information. Being critical of AIM, that's one thing. Come up with something, that you can really, you say, hey, this is some information that you made an error on. And they're willing to admit that they did. I've dealt with them on some issues where they made some slight errors. Okay, I'm done. Thank you all for coming, despite the way I ended here. Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. I hope it's worth your time. Usually, I go a little too long, an hour and a half. I figure, Lionel's kind of my mentor on this, sort of. I see where he can get away with these kind of discussions for about an hour and a half. He goes as long as 2 hours, and I've approached that a couple of times. Not a good idea, I don't think. You certainly have more important things to do than to sit and listen to me pontificate. But thank you for coming. I do enjoy it by and large. For the most part, I hope you do too. God bless you and yours. May you prosper and live a long life, as Spock would say, right? Live long and prosper, I guess, is what he used to say. How did he do that? Like that, I guess. Which, by the way, is a half of a... In case you don't know this, here's another thing, and I'll end on this. Did you know that that's half of the sign that the high priest of Israel would give during his blessings in the Holy of Holies? Have you ever seen that before? It's not the pyramid, okay? It has to do with some letters of the Hebrew alphabet. I won't say any more than that. But that was part of the sign that the high priest of Israel, not the Jews, okay? The high priest of Israel would give on certain blessings that he performed. Anyway, that's where Spock got that. Okay, so again, I hope God blesses you and yours. May God bless the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and the Second American Revolution. And may God bless President Donald Trump and his righteous endeavors, that he may listen to the Spirit of the Lord, and the gift of discernment from the Holy Spirit of God will descend upon him as the dews from heaven, and that he will be able to make the right decisions and have the courage to carry them out. The courage part is the issue. Not so much the understanding, but the courage. Thank you all for coming, and keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. Keep up your situational awareness. You never know when things could go rough. Okay? All right. I appreciate you coming out here for this time. Until next time, till we meet again. It used to be a show where they, till we meet again. Was that Roy Rogers? Yeah, I think so. Wow, showing my age. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. You might see me again. It depends on if these big revelations come out, if something changes on the information on Strzok page. They give more information. Stop protecting these criminals, for crying out loud. They need to be irradiated with the truth, with the light of day. Anything less is a disservice, a dishonesty, and criminal in my estimation.